Story 1. I heard the rain stopping, but only on my roof. This happened to me in 2019, just outside of Asheville, North Carolina. I had been staying alone in a friend's cabin that sat about a half-mile back from the road, tucked in along a tree line that backed up to a ridge. It wasn't some rustic shack. It had power, Wi-Fi, and heating, but it was still isolated. The kind of quiet that only amplifies your own breathing. It had been raining steadily for most of the week. That cold, steady Appalachian kind of rain, thin but relentless. It was so constant that by the third day I barely noticed it anymore. You stopped distinguishing the patterns. Just one long curtain of noise. One night, around 2 a.m., I was sitting up in bed, reading on my phone. The rain had been hammering the metal roof so hard that I couldn't hear my own breathing unless I concentrated on it. But then, without tapering, without even softening, it stopped. I mean, completely. At first, I didn't even register it. Just this sudden weightlessness in the room, like my ears had popped. Then came the kind of silence that doesn't feel real, like when someone hits mute on a film mid-scene. It wasn't that the rain had stopped. I could still hear it out there, the hiss of it against the trees, the ping of it hitting the trash bin out back. But not on the cabin, just the roof, bone dry. It hit me how wrong that was. Rain doesn't choose. Rain doesn't discriminate between trees and rooftops. It falls, or it doesn't. I stepped out of bed barefoot and padded toward the window. The sound was louder outside than it had been all night. Trees bending slightly, water tapping against leaves and branches. I opened the window and extended my hand. Rain hit my fingers instantly. I was about to close it again when something occurred to me. The outer wall of the house wasn't wet. The siding, the ground directly along the base, dry. I stepped back. I didn't know what I was supposed to think. I'd been up for hours, hadn't eaten since late evening. I figured I was tired, maybe not tracking things properly. Still, I couldn't stop thinking about that silence. The way the rain hadn't faded. It had been cut, as if something had reached down and drawn a line around the cabin. I tried to distract myself, sat back down, picked up my phone. The Wi-Fi was still fine, power steady, lights normal, but the feeling wouldn't leave me. You ever hear something missing? Not just quiet, but absence. Around 2:30, I started hearing it again. Not a gradual return, not a soft patter. It just came back. Instant, like someone flipped a switch. I don't remember falling asleep, but the next morning, the porch was completely dry. The surrounding woods were soaked, dripping, waterlogged, but the entire house perimeter, clean. No runoff, no puddles under the eaves, just dryness. I told myself I was overthinking it. But it didn't rain the next night, and I found myself listening, waiting for something I couldn't name. It rained again 3 days later. This time, I noticed it sooner. Around midnight, I was watching something on my laptop when I realized the usual rhythm of the rain had changed. It wasn't gone, not like last time, but shifted. The roof sounded quiet, but the front windows were louder. I muted the video and listened. The right side of the cabin sounded dry. The left side still had the patter of rainfall. That made even less sense. I walked toward the window facing the back deck and looked out. The railing glistened. Rain was falling steadily on the trees. I opened the door and stepped outside. My socks soaked immediately. But then I moved a step to the left, dry. Not just sheltered, dry. There was no porch awning, no overhang. But the moment I moved 3 feet to the left, my skin was untouched. Still air, dry wood beneath me. It wasn't a clean edge either. It shifted. The edge of the rain was fuzzy, wavering, like heat above pavement. I stepped back. The dry area moved too, slightly, like it was keeping distance. I didn't move for at least a minute, my eyes adjusting to the shadows. The moon was out that night, full and pale, giving just enough visibility to make out shapes beyond the trees. Then I saw it, not clearly, just a form, not walking, just standing, a little way off, past the fire pit, human height. No detail, no features, not even clothing, just the absence of rain. It stood where the dryness was. A body-shaped gap in the downpour, not even a ripple in the puddles near it. Nothing touched it. I stood motionless, heart pounding. The shape didn't move, but the rain kept changing around it like it was adjusting. I backed up into the cabin slowly, shutting the door without turning around. My breath shook, but I forced myself not to run. Something in me knew that running would make it real. I waited. The dry patch never came to the window. That night, I didn't sleep, and when the sun rose, everything was wet again, even the spot where it had been standing. But something was off, not visibly, just this feeling. Like my brain had seen something it wasn't supposed to know existed, something shaped like a person, but never meant to be one. I left the cabin for a while after that, stayed with a friend in town, told myself it was just to be social. I didn't mention what I saw. But when the forecast showed more rain coming, I felt pulled back. I don't know why, curiosity maybe, or something deeper. It started raining again late Saturday night. I turned off all the lights, sat in the dark, listening. For hours it was normal. The roof, the trees, the occasional gust. Then, just before 3 a.m., I noticed something I hadn't before. The barometer on my phone had dropped sharply, like a sudden pressure void, not over time, just dropped. The temperature dipped too. Not dramatically, just enough to notice, and then it began again. The rain on the roof stopped, this time not just on one side. It stopped everywhere, but I could still hear it outside. Only this time, I didn't open the door. I didn't move. I waited. Then I heard it, from inside the house, a single drip, followed by another. Not from a leak, from the living room. I turned my head. No lights. Just the dull grey wash of moonlight through the windows. Then I saw it. The shadow was standing inside, same shape, same outline, no movement, just the unmistakable suggestion of form, no features, no face, just stillness. The sound of rain continued outside, loud, present, but not here. Here, it was bone dry, except for one spot on the ceiling. A dark patch was spreading, not mold, not water damage, just dark. I didn't move. I don't think I even breathed. Then, another drip. Closer, and another. I never saw it move, but I knew it had. I turned away, closed my eyes. I whispered, "You're not real." When I looked back, it was gone. I left the house before morning, haven't been back since. But when it rains, sometimes I still feel it. That pressure shift, that moment where the rain stops, but only for me. And I still don't know why. Story 2. She knocked on my door, but she was already inside. This happened to me in 2018 in a small town near the Oregon coast. I just moved into a 2-story rental house that sat along a wooded road not far from the cliffs. I was alone. My partner and I had split a few months earlier, and I'd taken a short-term teaching position that required me to relocate quickly. The house was old, but well kept. Built in the 70s, with narrow stairs and creaky floorboards that echoed any footstep you made upstairs. It rained a lot there, almost daily in the fall. Light, steady sheets that seemed to settle into the wood itself. I'd gotten used to the smell of dampness, the kind of must that lives in carpets and corners, but the house itself never felt wet, not truly. The insulation was good, the windows tight. The weirdness began on a Thursday night. I had just gotten home from a parent-teacher conference and kicked off my shoes by the door. The foyer had a small doormat with that scratchy fabric, perfect for catching water, especially in a town where rain was constant. I always used it. Everyone did. That night, I heard a knock on the door just before 9:30. I wasn't expecting anyone, and out here, people didn't visit unannounced. Especially not at night. It wasn't a social area. My nearest neighbor lived almost half a mile up the road, and we barely spoke. The knock was soft but rhythmic, 3 times, then silence. I looked through the peephole. It was a girl, maybe 8, maybe 10, hard to tell. She was standing on the steps, arms hanging at her sides, drenched, clothes soaked through. Her hair looked stringy and dark with water, and she had no jacket, just a short-sleeved shirt and pants clinging to her like plastic wrap. I opened the door halfway. She didn't say anything, just looked at me. "Are you okay?" I asked. "Where are your parents?" Nothing. No change in her expression, just wide, unfocused eyes. I felt a chill crawl up my arm. Not fear, just unease. Something about the stillness. "I can call someone for you," I said. That's when I noticed her shoes, or lack of them. She was barefoot, standing in freezing rain, and not shivering. I opened the door wider, stepped forward a bit. "You shouldn't be out here, come in." But before she could move, or maybe as I turned slightly, she wasn't there. Not gone, just not there. I stepped outside, scanned the road. No one, no sound of running. The street was empty. I thought maybe she'd slipped around the side of the house, but the porch steps were old wood. They creaked loudly if you even leaned on them. I'd have heard it. Still, I figured maybe she panicked. I shut the door, locked it, turned back toward the kitchen. That's when I saw the footprints. Upstairs, not muddy, just wet, clear prints on the floor above, stretching out across the landing toward the bathroom. Bare feet, small, fresh. I froze in place, looked toward the stairs. There were none on the foyer tile, none on the doormat, not even on the wood near the bottom step, but the ones upstairs were definite, sharp, like someone had stood there only seconds ago. The wrongness hit all at once, not fear yet, just this sudden realization that something didn't follow the rules. I grabbed the kitchen light switch and flipped it on, then slowly climbed the stairs, calling out, "Hello?" No sound, just the patter of rain outside. At the top, I could see the prints more clearly, each one crisp and complete, as if someone had stepped out of a bath and walked barefoot along the hallway. They stopped in front of the bathroom door. It was open. I stepped inside. No one. Nothing. The room was dry, towels still folded, rug untouched, but in the sink, a single drop of water, still rippling. The next morning, the prints were gone. Completely. No smudges, no stains. The floor looked as if it had been cleaned. I didn't call anyone. What would I say? I told myself maybe I imagined it. That maybe the knock had been someone else. A delivery gone wrong. A neighbor's kid. A prank. The footprints? A dream. A half-sleep hallucination. But over the next few nights, things began to shift. Every time I went into the bathroom, I found the cabinet door slightly open, just enough to catch your eye. I hadn't touched it. In fact, I didn't keep anything in there, just a spare towel and a couple candles. The mirror above the sink was the old kind, slightly warped, silver backing flecked with age. It made your face look soft around the edges. I started noticing something else. Every time I turned away from the mirror, just before my head fully moved, I'd think I saw motion behind me, not distinct, just a blur, but enough that my stomach would clench. The worst night was 3 days later. I'd just finished showering. The steam hadn't cleared yet, and the room was foggy. I stood in front of the mirror with a towel wrapped around me, wiping condensation from the glass. I paused, looked at myself, then saw her, in the mirror, standing directly behind me, not reflected in the steam, in the cleared part, where I had just wiped. I turned around so fast the towel fell. Nothing there, just an empty, still room. But I felt it, a drop of water run down my spine. Not from me. It was cold, ice cold. It ran perfectly straight, as if someone had touched me with something wet. I locked the bathroom door after that. Every time, I also started leaving lights on, not because I was afraid of the dark, but because darkness makes mirrors worse, and I was starting to think the mirror didn't just reflect, it recorded or alerted. The final time I saw her in the glass, she wasn't behind me. She was looking in, from the other side. I started looking things up. Old local news, folklore blogs, even Reddit. I didn't expect much, just wanted to feel less alone. But there were patterns, not common, not detailed, but they were there. Children, always wet, always barefoot, always silent, reported during storms, never before, never after. The term I found in a fringe post, echo children. They were called that because of how they appeared. Backward, reported leaving before arriving, doors found open before knocks were heard, windows wet on the inside but dry outside. One user said the pattern was clearest near the coast, towns like mine, places with fog, with cliffs, with a kind of pressure that felt heavier than air. They never hurt anyone, but they never left either. Not really. After that last incident in the mirror, I bought cameras, small indoor ones, motion activated. I placed one in the entryway, one in the kitchen, and one facing the stairs. I didn't know what I expected. Part of me hoped they'd catch something. Part of me hoped they wouldn't. A week passed, then two. Then the rain came back. Not a storm, just the constant, relentless drizzle that blurred the trees and made the house smell like wet stone. I got home late that Friday, poured myself tea, settled into the couch. I don't know why, but I checked the camera app before going to bed. There was one alert, 7:14 p.m. I tapped the thumbnail. The living room was dark. Motion sensor had triggered early, just the dim silhouette of the kitchen in the background. Then I saw her. She was standing in the living room, facing the front door, not coming in, just already there, soaked, still. And a few seconds later, the doorbell rang. She knocked after arriving. The file ended there. I didn't sleep. I kept all the lights on, and I never heard the knock with my own ears. Only through the speaker later, when I played the footage back. By morning, the alert was gone. Not deleted, just vanished. No history, no archive, but I still have the memory of the knock and the girl who had already come inside to wait for it. Did you enjoy the content and it made a difference for you? Click on Super Thanks and support our work. Story 3. The man across the street never moved, even in the lightning. This happened in 2020, when I was living alone in a small rental home in upstate New York. The neighborhood was quiet, mostly older residents, the kind of place where people rake leaves twice a day and still wave when they back out of the driveway. I worked from home, did freelance programming, and had little contact with anyone beyond the occasional grocery run or mail delivery. The house across from mine had been empty for a while, or so I thought. It was a 2-story colonial with shuttered windows and a yard that never changed. The for sale sign had been removed months earlier, but no one seemed to move in. No cars in the driveway, no porch lights, just a silent, static presence across the street. Then came the first storm of spring. I remember it because I hadn't seen lightning that vivid in years. Constant flashes that lit up the neighborhood like a slow, pulsing camera. The kind of storm where you could count the seconds between the crack of thunder and the light returning. I was sitting on the couch, blinds open, lights off, just watching. And that's when I saw him. At first I thought he was part of the porch, a fixture, a shape just to the left of the column. But then another flash hit, and I realized it was a man, standing there, facing my house. He wasn't moving. I assumed he'd just stepped outside. Maybe the house wasn't empty after all. Maybe someone had moved in and I just hadn't noticed. But after 10 minutes, he hadn't shifted. Not once. Another flash, same position. I tried to convince myself he was just taking in the storm, but that stillness was off. Not casual. It felt posed, intentional. Lightning again. His coat didn't ripple. Not even his hair. Every other tree, every flagpole, every loose object flickered and moved with the gusts, but not him. It was like watching a paused frame spliced into a live video. That visual stutter that doesn't make sense to your eyes, not because it's hidden, but because it shouldn't be possible. I stood up, moved closer to the window, pressed my palm against the glass. He was still there, same posture, same direction. It had been at least 15 minutes now. I started watching the lightning for rhythm, counting. Flash, 1, 2, 3, thunder. Flash again, still. If he moved at all, it wasn't visible in the normal sense. He was too still for too long. I stepped back from the glass and tried to make sense of what I was feeling. It wasn't fear, not yet. It was something stranger, a disconnect between what I saw and what I was supposed to see. The man never moved, not once, not even when it started to rain. I didn't sleep that night. The storm went on for hours, and so did the flashes. At some point, I set up a chair by the window and just watched. I told myself I was being paranoid, that it was a neighbor or maybe even a delivery guy caught in the rain, but something wouldn't let me look away. Then I started focusing on his face. Each flash revealed just a little more, not like he was approaching, but like the resolution was increasing, as if each pulse gave me a clearer image of something I wasn't supposed to study. And what I saw began to shift. The first few flashes, he looked middle-aged, sharp cheekbones, short dark hair, wearing what looked like a grey raincoat. But 3 or 4 flashes later, the face changed. Not obviously, not a morphing, but more like a different face entirely had taken that same position between pulses. Older, no hair, or maybe longer hair. The next flash, the face was smoother, almost featureless. Then it was him again. Then older, eyes deeper set, mouth slightly parted. It wasn't just that he looked different. It was that the differences only appeared during the lightning. Between flashes, it was impossible to tell what he looked like, even staring directly at him. But each pulse seemed to show a version of him from a different moment, or maybe a different reality. I blinked too long during one and nearly cried out when the next flash hit, because this time the face was mine, for only a second. The storm lit up his features, and they mirrored mine exactly. Eyes wide, mouth parted in confusion, wearing the same expression I must have had. Then it was gone. The next flash, he was someone else again. That was the moment I felt real fear, because whatever he was, it wasn't changing over time, it was changing through light. Lightning wasn't showing him, it was slicing him, revealing thin layers of identity like pages in a book, visible only under electric light. He never moved. But his truth did. I pulled the blinds and sat in the dark, not hiding, just unsure which version of him might be watching me next. I stopped looking for a while. The storm ended just after 3 a.m., and by dawn, the porch across the street was empty again. I tried to forget it, blamed it on exhaustion, on storm-induced stress. I even Googled things like facial distortion, lightning hallucination, and found a few scientific threads, something called snapshot cognition. Apparently, when stimuli flash at consistent intervals, your brain can override its normal continuity processes, meaning you don't perceive things the way they are. You perceive them in fractured, isolated moments that don't always match. It explained some of it, but not the rest, because 4 nights later, during another storm, it happened again. Same place, same posture, same man. But this time, the power cut out. No electronics, no lights. Just me, the dark, and the steady beat of rain on the roof. I opened the blinds without thinking, maybe to prove to myself it was over, that he wasn't there. But he was, exactly where he'd been. Even without power, the lightning was just as bright, just as steady. And so were the changes. The flashes revealed even worse faces this time, not just distortions, but versions. One wore a smile that was too wide. Another had no eyes, just 2 hollow shapes under a dripping brow. One flash showed him turned completely around, not facing me, but the house behind him, as if the past and future had been flipped. Then came the worst flash. The porch was empty, gone. No man, just rain hitting the railings. And then I heard a creak behind me. My heart slammed into my ribs. I turned, no one. I looked back outside, still empty. Then another creak, closer. The lights came on suddenly. Power restored. Silence. I moved slowly through the house, checking every room. Every window, every door, all locked until I reached the foyer. That's when I saw the footprints, wet, bare, coming in from the front door and leading toward the stairs. They didn't stop on the steps. They went up. I followed them, heart pounding, unable to breathe. Up the narrow stairs, down the short hall. They stopped in front of the attic door, a door I hadn't opened since moving in. I stood there for what felt like 10 minutes, just listening. Then I heard it. Not footsteps, not breathing, just a short, faint sound, like a throat clearing. Not from the attic, from inside my room. I turned, and the lights went out again. One last flash of lightning lit the hallway, and the man was standing at the top of the stairs, soaking wet, no face at all, and when the dark returned, he never left. Not really, not even now.